In this, there is a poll question too. So if you can go in there, I'm not sure what the poll question is, Laura. Do you know specifics on that? Apparently not. So, but jump in there, you'll see a poll question. It's probably a yes or no, or it's fill in the multiple blank, and you can go and answer those as required. The other part of this is I'm the type of guy that likes the interaction too as well. I know Sharon Sieber is. So instead of going down and heads down and asking a question, you go, man, this is a long question, and it's going to take me forever doing the thumbs in here. Just pop your hand up anytime during the briefing, okay, and we'll try to answer that question as best we can there too as well. And sometimes the interaction helps us narrow the scope of the question down too as well. Make sense? Okay, so that's it with meeting polls. Anybody seen this before or has used it? Good, this will be your first opportunity, except for you two that are in the room. All right, next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is a slide I always cover in here. This talks about what the chief and the secretary feel, that they're at the bottom of an upside down pyramid, and that their entire job is to support all of us that are out there in the field, all right? Drive the authorities and responsibilities down to the squadron commander level in order to ensure that you get your mission done, okay? Same thing at AFPC. We're out there we're coming out on these road shows, okay, to try to be more open and transparent what's going on in the personnel world so that you get an idea of the things that are going on here, and then we can bring up your issues too so that we can move forward as an Air Force together. And our entire job, all right, as AFPC, all right, is to support those that are executing the mission. And we tell our folks at AFPC when they first come in, and we do what the right start is, all right, or their initial intro briefing, is I say, you got to find a way to connect the dots to the tip of the spear. You are not the one, all right, in the RPA that's getting bombs on target on time. But without you in the Personnel Center getting your job done, those individuals on the tip of the spear will never have the opportunity, all right, to actually get bombs on target on time. So the things that we do at the Personnel Center, as you know, all right, impact folks across the Air Force, all right? And we are the execution arm for personnel actions across the Air Force as required. So if we go to the next slide, I'll kind of show you that in here. So we talked about the chief and the secretary at the bottom and half A1 at the bottom of that thing. Then we got the Personnel Center. Then we've got the commanders, and then we have all of our airmen that are out there to include our civilians, right? That's everybody that we're talking about. So if you look at that piece or that slide, there's a red line between policy and execution. Okay, I told you we are the execution arm of personnel actions. So if you come up and you go, hey, why, for the civilian hiring process, why is it AFPC's policy that we're doing this or that we do it this way? Just realize, okay, we are not the policy makers, we're the execution of policy. We have the ability to shape and adjust the policy out there, but if you're dealing with a policy issue, we need to move that up to half A1, potentially OPM, those type of things to get those policy pieces and parts fixed. If you have an execution issue, why is it taking so long for this hiring action to get through AFPC? That's something we got to work. Okay, and we can do that from an execution side of the house. Or why wasn't I wasn't picked up for this deliberate development or this development opportunity? Then it's something that we could probably get an answer back to you on those type of things. All right? And in the vein, go next slide, in the vein of being more open and transparent, we're coming out on the road. Don't need to hit the big details on it, but you guys have got the Roadshow right here, the civilian portion. We do enlisted, officer, civilian, and leadership. In there, we also get with the FSSs. This is our 6th road show now in the course of the year. We just started doing this again. The intent is that we will continue this process. It costs us quite a bit of money, as you can imagine, to bring 10 folks out on the road and go all the way around the Pacific area. But we think this is something that is very value added in making sure that we're connecting with you guys and getting on the right track from the personnel side. So next. Okay, and then there was one last slide up there. I guess we changed it for the AFPC for the civilian side, but there's also a biweekly communication that we put out from AFPC, all right, that also covers civilian topics in there too. So potentially you guys have seen that. Anybody seen the AFPC biweekly communication? Anyone? All right, we've got one up front. If it's something that you think you'd like to get, please don't hesitate to bring that forward, or you can distribute that as required to all folks that are out here. Here's the topics that we're going to cover, and ultimately I'm going to turn it over to Sharon. We'll jump in here as required. We've got folks that are on the Meeting Pulse app that are also trying to attempt to answer some of your questions as we're going through this. You guys ready? You fired up? Okay, all right. Sharon, over to you. Or Chief Hoagie first.
I'm not Sharon.
Sorry.
But I did stay at Holiday Inn Express last night. No, hey, good afternoon and welcome to your Air Force Personnel Center Civilian Town Hall. I'm going to be real quick here, but I want to start off with a quick little history lesson. I want everybody in the room to picture our beautiful Air Force symbol real quick. And if you can't, there's a great one up here on the podium. Broken down into two sections. The top section, stylized wings, right? Which represents our enlisted force structure, the men and women of the enlisted force. Broken down into 6 components, which are our six distinct capabilities of the United States Air Force. The bottom portion is a 5-pointed star that surrounds itself around a globe. That globe reminds us of our global vigilance and global domination across the globe. The 3 diamonds underneath represent our core values. But I want to focus on that star. The star represents our total force and family. Active, guard, reserve, retirees, and say it again. Civilians, absolutely. We couldn't do what we do without you. Absolute paramount to mission execution, so my hat's off to you. Next slide. So whether I put stripes on this, captain's bars, general stars, business attire, this is not the perception. We actually got this off of Airman NCO, Senior NCO webpage a little while back. But this was me. For 26 years, I thought AFPC did everything to say no. That every cubicle matrix led to no. And we pushed as much guidance, AFIs, and memorandums down to the tactical level so we would just confuse airmen, both civilian and military. And if we confused them, they would just go away. That is not the case. Your Air Force Personnel Center consists of about 2,900 steely-eyed warriors, both uniformed and civilian, that generate wins for you and your families every single day. So again, on behalf of the entire team, thank you for the hospitality. Enjoy this. Use Meeting Polls. Ask candid, transparent questions, because that's what we're here to do. Thanks. Without further ado, now, the one, the only, because there is only one, Sharon Schneider. Yay!
Thanks, Chief. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, I'm Sharon Schneider. I'm the Division Chief at AFPC for Staffing, Recruiting, and Force Management. Very long title to say that my organization does everything from the time the position becomes vacant till we get somebody in the seat, and then we handle those force management programs like Vera Visa, Production and Force, Compliance, Pay, PCS, all those kinds of topics. So got a few things to talk about here today. Going to go cover civilian hiring and then also some career development pieces. So next slide, please. So let's talk about the goals for civilian hiring. We have 2 goals. The first goal is conventional hiring. For those of you that have applied for a job before that you've seen on USA Jobs, a referral certificate gets issued, selections get made. That's what we refer to as the conventional hiring process. But then we also have direct hire authority, express lane actions, we call them, which is also 30% disabled vets, Schedule A candidates, those individuals with disabilities, and also expedited hiring. That goal is 50 days. So we have an 80-day goal of conventional hiring and a 50-day goal for the express lane actions. And I'll talk about where we're at here in a minute and things that we're doing towards improving the hiring process. But I want to talk a little bit about what pre-intake is, because this is a partnership. It's a partnership with the Civilian Personnel Office, but also with the hiring officials, because hiring officials are the ones that start the recruitment actions, make those selections, and then the Civilian Personnel Office is the one that will initiate those actions and then take care of the pre-employment processing on it, while AFPC does the middle part of it, which may be advertising, that may be processing the action, looking at qualifications and experiences and that sort of thing. So we all have a part in this role. And so pre-intake is the workforce planning part. And I found it interesting that in the last session we had the officers in the room, and the question came up, why do I have to wait for a job to become vacant before I can fill it? And the answer is you shouldn't be actually waiting that long. That's part of the workforce planning piece, and you actually should be submitting your request if you're a hiring official to hire those jobs when you know it's going to become vacant. So civilians in the overseas area have a DEROS, whether that DEROS is their own as a civilian or whether it's tied to a military, as a military spouse relocating, there is a DEROS. So you kind of have a good projection on when those jobs become vacant, so you can plan to submit those actions. So that's what we mean by pre-intake. Next slide. So here's where we're at right now for our statistics in terms of conventional hiring and express lane hiring. We are at 124 days. Remember I said our goal is 80 days, so we're not there yet. We are making progress. A year ago, we were at 155 days, so we've come down significantly, but we're still not where we need to be. We are doing a lot of initiatives to improve, and I'll get into very specific ones that we have done on the next slide. But for direct hire authority, we were at 67 days, which last year at this time was 97 days. So in that area, we've made significant progress for our express lane and direct hire authorities. Now I know, before I get the question, I haven't seen it in the pulse yet, but I know I probably will because I usually do. Why can we not use direct hire authority overseas in the foreign areas, right? Unfortunately, we are working to try to change that, but right now, direct hire, expedited hire is not available for use in the foreign areas. We can use it for Alaska and Hawaii, but we can't use it in the foreign areas. And that is based on a DoD policy for military spouse preference and family member preference hiring. So until we get some sort of an authorization from DoD, which is what we are working on, we won't be able to use those authorities in the foreign areas. Next slide. So let's talk about some of the initiatives. One of the big initiatives that we did this past January was we went to functional servicing as our servicing model. Well, so what does that mean? Previously, when we serviced by installation and by MAGCOM. So there was one team that did all of the recruitment for that installation and that MAGCOM. In January, we went to a functional servicing. So now it's done, all engineers are done by one team. Why is that important and why did that help? It's because if I was filling positions, let's say at Minot, I may have had a handful of a certain type of specialty engineers, right? So if I'm not filling those engineers all day long, and I have a vacancy that comes up that I now need to fill, I've got to go out and I've got to refresh myself as a production person to see what are the qualifications, what should I be looking for, what's the latest. And it will take me a little while longer to work a recruitment action because I've got to refresh myself on that. But if I'm filling engineers all day long, I'm going to become very proficient on what those qualifications are, what the OPM standard says, so I can expedite hiring for those types of occupations. And that has already proven true. We have seen about a 29% improvement in our time to hire since we went to functional servicing. Now, one of the concerns that we had in going to functional servicing was keeping in mind our customer, which one of those is your civilian personnel office, is who do they call when they have questions, or their wing commander says, this is now my #1 recruitment priority. How do they let the teams know? They've got to call 7, 8 different teams, right? Well, we didn't want to lose the ability for them to have a belly button. So we set up what's called an impact team. That's our mission partner advocate team. And basically they have one POC for their installation and their MAGCOM that they can go to and say, I need help with my hiring actions for Kadena. And that individual helps them rather than going to all the different teams. So we took care of that concern so that the customer has someone to go to. Civilian OneLink. One of the things that I've been at AFPC for a couple of years, and when I got there, it was kind of shocking to me that we didn't have standard work processes readily available. And one of the things that we did about 1.5 years ago when General Kelly was our commander was we added additional staff to the production floor. But it's really hard to find qualified HR people. And so we had to bring them in as trainees. They came in as 7 Target 11s, but that's a lot of training to bring them up to a full journeyman level. So we had to have a tool that would help us do that. What we came up with was a Civilian One Link, and basically it's a one-stop shop, full transparency on all of our processing. So a new staffer on the floor with their training can literally go into the One Link and go step by step through the recruitment process and learn what it's all about. All the tools are there, all the training's there. We have videos, we have how-to, we have job aids, we have the references, the policy. Everything that they need to work in action is going to be in the One Link. To include one of our other initiatives, which is called our Civilian Hiring Dashboard. So the dashboard is a tool where anyone can go in and look at it and see where's a hiring action in the process. Where is it at? Is it waiting for pre-employment with the installation? Is it waiting for a manager to make a selection? Is it waiting for a staffer to send out an announcement on it? Where's it at in the process? Full transparency again so that we know what's happening with those actions and we're moving them along through the pipeline. The other thing that we did is we're looking to put in automation wherever we can. So we have adapted from the Army, they've been using it for about 12 years now, a tool called AutoNOAA. And basically it's an automated tool that helps us process personnel actions. And the routing of personnel actions alone automated was a huge lift off of the actual production floor and the intake team to move those requests along. So now we're using AutoNOAA to do that. And in doing that, we reduce the time that it takes to route that RPA through where it needs to go to the production floor. And we were down to less than 1 day from 18 days when we first deployed AutoNOAA. Process improvement, we are continually doing process improvement events. We have one going on right now, as a matter of fact, at AFPC to go through what does the RPA processing look like and where can we make improvements from the AFPC model, Material Command. We have one scheduled with our delegated examining unit that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. So we've got several. We've done an OCONUS rapid improvement event, continuous process improvement event, to look at what can we improve in our OCONUS processing to streamline and try to reduce the time to hire that it takes for the OCONUS areas, both USAFE and PACAV. That was done about 6 weeks ago, and so we're working through what we discovered and what we needed to do to streamline those processes. Next slide. So some of the key actions for improving civilian recruitment. So the first one up there is the standard core personnel documents. So with the release of the latest AFI 1401, the use of SCPDs is now mandatory. And what does that mean when we say it's mandatory? That means if it's applicable. Okay, so just because a PD is in the library, it may not make it applicable. It still has to be applicable. But if it is utilized, it helps us in the recruitment area because all those standardized core documents have assessments already developed for them. And how is the assessment through the hiring process? Well, anyone who's applied for a job has seen those questions and they answer A through E. A being I've never done this job before. E being I'm an expert and I teach others how to do it, right? Everyone's answered those kinds of questions when applying for a job. Those have to be created, those assessments, and they're unique to the position description. So if we're using a standardized core document, then those questions are already developed. If we're not using one, then a staffer on the floor has to develop those assessment questions off of that PD. So that's how it expedites that process from a recruitment standpoint. One of the things that we did was we went to Headquarters Air Force and asked, can we have a policy to address drug testing and physical exams? Now, in the overseas area, because it involves a PCS most often, these aren't utilized as much. But the ability is there for the installation manager to say, I'm going to bring somebody on board and I'm going to drug test them after the fact. And why were we willing to take that risk? Well, because less than 2% would pop positive on a drug test. And so there's administrative procedures to handle those individuals that would test positive on a drug test through either a probationary period or through the adverse actions under one of the other requirements. Physical exams was the same way. We could bring them on and just not have them do the physical portions of the job until we we're able to have them take an examination and be cleared for physical work. And we already talked about the workforce planning, submitting those requests as soon as you know you're going to have a vacancy, and in fact, doing advanced recruitment. I will share with you that at the Personnel Center, we don't police when those RPAs come into us, those requests for personnel actions. If they are sent to us, our assumption is they've been properly routed, they've been properly approved, and they are good to go. I will even take a request that is just for an advanced recruitment. You don't even know that there's going to be somebody leaving just yet, but it's a high occupation of turnover, and you want to keep a list in the hopper, we're willing to do that. Next slide. This is a tool bag that we share with commanders. It's just a quick look at things that they have that can help with the hiring process, helping partner with the hiring process. So we talked about submitting the RPAs. Right now, the average time across all of Air Force from a time a job becomes vacant till a RPA gets into the system, the request for the action, is on average 77 days. That means that job's been vacant for 77 days before it comes to AFPC to even start the recruitment process. We would like to get that down to it's with us before it even becomes vacant. But that's what the average is currently for the Air Force. We've already talked about expedited direct hire, which isn't as applicable over here. So we talked about the streamlining and the SCPDs. And let me talk a little bit about the talent acquisition team. So talent acquisition, we have an awesome team down at AFPC. They act like a headhunter. They do much of what they do in the private sector with Indeed and Monster, those kinds of organizations. They do virtually the same thing. So if you're having difficulty finding candidates for your job, I would reach out to the talent acquisition team, because even though you may not use direct hire or expedited hiring, if there's a job announced out there, they can go data mining for resumes, contact candidates and say, you look like you're a good fit for the Air Force job that we're hiring for. Here's the vacancy announcement. Please go apply. So they can help you with recruiting candidates and finding candidates for your jobs. Next slide. Yes, sir.
To talk about the civilian hiring side of the house, and the thing that Sharon's doing a great job here in covering it, right? 124 days, I think is what you said was the overall. 2 years ago, right, we had this huge push. How do we fix this problem across the Air Force? It's taking us way too long. What you care about, right, is, you know, folks that get here in time, and it doesn't take 180 days in order to do that. So AFPC, the execution arm, we live in a glass house. So our goal was to fix our processes first. Ultimately, when we take a look at the timeline in here, our goal was to drive the amount of time that we're working these problems down to 25 days within the Personnel Center. We're at 30 days right now with our processes at the Personnel Center. So what does that tell you? If the average is 124 days and it's 30 days at the AFPC process, where else? What's going on? It's both at the front end, all right, and the back end on our hiring process. So over the course of this next year, where's our CPO folks? All right, do we have some CPO folks? Over the course of our next year is how do we work together as a team, all right, between AFPC and you and our CPOs across the Air Force to continue to drive that down. So I think what we've effectively done is we've cleaned the house at AFPC, and now what it is to try to continue to work that process outside of AFPC and working that across the board, all right? And ultimately, I think that Civilian One link that Ms. Sharon talked about in there, the Civilian One link, will be a huge help in identifying exactly where our requests for personnel actions are as they're going through the system. It is stuck at AFPC at this particular location. Copy, got it. Let's fix that, call them up and ask them why. Or it's in transition, we didn't realize it, between the hiring authority and us here at the base level where we're waiting for the hiring authority to make the determination of who they're going after, right? Those type of things, we've really got to pull this down and pull it together. Okay, make sense? All right, thanks.
Thank you, sir. So a couple of programs here. Open season's coming up, right? It's about a week or so. Wanted to foot stomp the GRB program is where you would make your elections. At any time you have a qualifying event is where you would go and make your elections for your benefits. Put a plug in for that. And then Employee Assistance Program. Has anyone here used the Employee Assistance Program at all? No? This program is fantastic. I mean, it has counseling for financial needs. It has counseling for some medical things. Now, they're not counselors per se, but they will help with the initial contact and then get you some references and referrals on where you can go. They can help with just about anything. They can find you a contractor for something that you're working on at your house, adult care, child care, all kinds of resources are available through the Employee Assistance Program. So I wanted to foot stomp that program. No, it's a website, sir. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit about civilian development. Next slide. So Workforce Civilian Development. This is an organized, funded program. And basically, it is a program designed to identify those with potential for leadership opportunities. It's our way to fill the bench, so to speak, so that as our workforce succession planning efforts, when we're looking at that, right now we have about 14 to 19% of our current employees are going to be eligible for retirement by 2021. So that's a big amount of talent that's going to be walking out the door. So what are we doing to make sure we've got folks lined up and ready to take over when that talent walks out the door? So this is what this program is designed to do. I did get a question at the last town hall that, you talk a lot about the GS employees. What about wage grade, right? Our trades and craft folks. Well, we are working on a lot of development opportunities for them, and you should be seeing some of that roll out very soon. But most of these programs I'll talk about right now are on the GS side. So we have all kinds of programs here. We have long-term, we have short-term, we have individual courses. There's all kinds of opportunities for development. Next slide. This is what our workforce CDE looks like. You'll see there's the basic, intermediate, and then senior level. And that basically goes by grade levels as to eligibility. Now, just because you see that this particular opportunity is available for like GS 12 through 13, and you're in 11, I would double check and go to the MyPERS site, which is down here in the lower left, and I would look at those eligibilities because oftentimes we don't have enough candidates in those categories, and we will go down lower in the grades in order to reach other and fill those classes up or those opportunities up, if you will. So there's, like I said, some long-term, some short-term, there's some just regular classes that you can go to. There's change classes, leadership classes, all kinds of development opportunities. Next slide. So we do have what we call continuing service agreements with some of these training events. And the reason for that is part of the law requires that if we offer training opportunities that are for a good period of time, we have to get a return on investment, right? That's part of what Congress has put in the law. So those continuing service agreements are that tool that help us to monitor that we've gotten that return on investment. So along with that, conversely, is the penalty side of it. So if you're applying and you're getting accepted to these opportunities and you want to decline, there's going to be some penalties because these are funded classes, and we often use private sector organizations to offer them to us, like University of Tennessee, and it usually involves a TDY and that sort of thing. So there's some expenses that we're on the hook for, and if you're going to cancel out at the last minute, then we're going to incur that expense, right? So we've got to make sure that folks that are doing this are truly committed to following through with the opportunity. Next slide. Timeline. Let me talk about the timeline. This has changed for this cycle, right? It used to be we were on a September to March cycle. Now we're on a January to September cycle. So the one thing I want to point out is that when the applications are due, they have to be completed by the 13th of March. Okay, so foot stomp that. Next slide. How do you do it? You do it through MyVector. And let me talk a little bit about MyVector because this is an awesome tool. This tool will allow you to find a mentor. Highly, highly recommend you go out and get a mentor. Find someone that has done something with their career that you would like to emulate and find out how they did it, what helped them, what challenges did they have as they went along. This tool will help you do that. So not only is the tool that we're using for the workforce development application process, but it's also a tool for career planning. You can go out there, your experience is loaded out in there, the jobs that you've held is already out there for you, and you can go out and you can look at it and say, yeah, I've done that, this is where I need to go. You can find multiple mentors. You know, if you're not sure quite what you want to do with your career, you can go out and say, well, let me look at this one, let me look at that one, and what one will get me where I really want to go. There's a lot of goodness in this tool. Highly recommend going out and taking a look at it. Next slide. Tuition assistance. I know I had a question in the meeting pulse about tuition assistance and also student loan. Someone said student loan forgiveness. Well, unfortunately, we don't have forgiveness policies. We have repayment policies. So you can apply for student loan repayment and get your student loan paid for. We don't have the ability to waive your student loan. There is some limitations with the loan repayment program where it's taxable. We are working right now, we're advocating with Congress, but that means changing the tax law. And I don't know if anyone's ever read anything about what it takes to change tax law. It is a lot. You know, the government likes their money. And so we're having some challenges trying to work through getting the tax law changed. But the good news is we are working to increase the dollar amount that we can pay towards student loan repayment. Currently, the max is $60,000. We've asked to go to $100,000, and we think that that's going to get approved in this next NDAA. But more to come on the tax part of it. So it is still taxable income, but we'll keep working to get that changed. So most of the tuition assistance, it's 75% of the course amount for most individuals. So that's a pretty good amount. Next slide. PME, part of the career development program, is professional military education opportunities. That can be for going to Air War College, that can be going to Air Command and Staff College. All of those opportunities are available. The eligibility is there. You do have to have a bachelor's degree for these programs to go into them, but if you're interested in going to SOS and going and getting your master's degree for ACSC, that opportunity exists. Next slide. This slide, there's a lot of words on this slide, but for me, it comes down to one thing: communication. This is all about having a dialogue, communicating with your mentors, supervisors communicating with their employees. What I like to do is with my employees at the start of the performance year, when we sit down and we talk about what are the performance expectations for the year, I talk about what are your career goals, how are you doing in achieving those, what have we done over the past year to get you there, what kind of developmental opportunities, as well as what kind of work assignments. You know, maybe you have a desire to do a particular work assignment, so have that conversation. But it's about having that dialogue to come up with goals for you. And this would not only be with just supervision and employees, but also with your mentors. So if you've selected a mentor, having that conversation and bouncing things off of them from for your goal perspective. Next slide. So everyone in here belongs to a career field. And these are all of the career field teams that we have in the Air Force. And these folks are another source for you to contact and ask about career development, ask about career opportunities, career progression, what kind of assignments and things are out there, what kind of vacancies are coming up at whatever locations. They are the points of contact that you can go to and ask those kinds of questions. Okay, I think this is my last slide. Oh, yep.
I'm really loud anyway, as you guys know, so the people who know me. So Cleveland from Headquarters Pack FA1. The civilian development, please, you've heard us foot stomp this before. Please apply. So that's all the please put things going in there, your CDE, your developmental education, please apply. And what happens is I will put some things together along with our civilian personnel team, and it goes to Colonel Parrish, who most of you know is the A1. And we'll call you and see and really talk about what do you want to develop, where can you go. So when he goes to the development team, we can advocate for the things that you want. We've got some, you all know, you all are real superstars out here. Please let us help you get to where you want to go in your career. But we can't do that unless you apply. So please apply. If you have any questions, call us. Call Alice Hong. I know you all know them, Felicia Placencia and our team, and we'll help you put that package together for you. Or call your leadership. We work with them too. So we can get you where you want to go. If you have questions, ask us. Please call. Because we haven't got a lot of packages in from PACAF, and we usually do. So call if you have any questions, and we'll help you walk through it. Thanks.
Okay, so this is just next slide. This is just a slide of MyPERS and what you can find out there on the MyPERS. I always like to show it just to remind folks of all the different topics that we have out there as it relates to civilians. So we're getting a lot of good questions on the pulse, and so there's a couple here that I'd like to address that have come to the top of the list, if you will. I think we talked a little bit about why the hiring process takes so long. If not, it is a complex process. We are dealing with a lot of laws and a lot of regulations and OPM standards and that sort of thing, and then the sheer volume of work. So right now, for instance, we have over 11,000 requests in the system that we're currently working, and our staffing ratio is not as high as it is to the comparable other services. Our staffing ratio is a 1 to 323. So for every one position, or every 323 positions, we have one person working those. So we're working through it, and we recognize that it does take a long time to do the process, but as I talked about, some of those initiatives we're trying to get after, and we are coming down, but we do have a little ways to go on that.
It's been broken, right? Since 1995. It's been at 180 days. And what Sharon's telling you is that we have come a long way across the board. And I will tell you, for the open RPAs that are in the system right now, the average timeline at AFPC is 91 days. Okay, so it's about 87 for traditional hiring, and it's about 57, all right, for expediting. Those are the ones that are in the system. Every one of you is going to go, but I have a position, right, that's out there that is 265 days. Yes, you do. Okay, you've got to peel back the onion and actually what's going on with that. Did we provide a slate to those particular, on that one? And then those 5 individuals that we put forward weren't good enough, so we got to go right back through the system. Are we waiting on a security clearance for some of these? Yes, we are. We're waiting for security clearances on a lot of them. So when we take it as a whole, there are ones that are way long, okay? By the same tokens, there's ones that are happening at relatively a short time. And I'll just throw this out to you. As I've been in the seat for about a year and a half, I said, okay, how long on average does it take Google or a large company to bring somebody on board? Anybody know? 2 weeks? Any other guesses? 8 weeks. 8 weeks? You sure? You guys sure of that? Educated guess. Educated guess? 6 months? 120 days. So I go, okay, well, dadgummit, if it's taking a large corporation about 120 days to bring somebody on, we're at 124 days. We're really not that far off, are we? There are a lot of other pieces we can be better. The issue is we're competing, all right, against those companies for those same employees, all right? So they're not going to sit around that 180 days, all right, when they can get a job at some other location in much less time, and because they've got mouths to feed and they've got all the rest of that, those pieces and parts to come on. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, Paul Keenan from the MSG. Yeah. Thanks very much for coming today.
You bet.
Appreciate you sharing your briefing. Appreciate how hard your folks are working to improve things. But General, the number here is 209 days compiled by our Force Support Squadron. I think you'll get a point paper on that.
For the average.
For the average. So
okay.
We have some better, but some more. Overseas is harder. We sure could use some additional help, from your organization, because 209 days means that about 1/5 of our workforce is vacant at all times. Yeah. That can be handled on a short term, but when you look at long term, it's very difficult for productivity, mission, and morale.
Yep, it's a team effort, right? And part of that, between you and USAFE, and you can jump on this, you guys are the last, all right, of the areas where we're transitioning in AFPC to functional, all right, versus service by MAGCOM. In other words, an individual has to take an RPA and go through the entire process because they're working through the MAGCOM that way. We've changed it across the board where we're going by function now. So an individual works the function of an RPA and the process works much quicker, all right? We kind of dedicated you and USAFE to wait on that processes. Now I think we're in a position we're actually going to convert you guys, all right, as well to function. And that's what Sharon was talking about. Well, if we go to function, then we have no control. We don't have that connectivity with AFPC. You will through the MPAC team, all right? That's your direct continuity, all right, into AFPC to find out where RPAs are and the rest of those kind of things will be through that MPAC team. But you're right. So you're longer on average, all right? And then there's the team effort. Where's our CPO folks too as well? To find out, to sit back and go exactly where these things are in the system. Okay? They know.
So you're correct. So in terms of PACAF, we just recently rolled the Alaska bases into functional servicing. So, I mean, literally like 2 weeks ago, we rolled them in. So once we get them settled and we've got some good data points, then we'll look at how does that look rolling out the rest of the PACAF team. So another question that we had in the pulse that has come up to the top, and we get this one quite often, and General Toth is very good at weighing in on this one as well. So I'll start it off, and that has to do with other sister services and the grade levels at jobs at other sister services versus with Air Force, right? And the disconnect or potential imbalance, if you will. So we know that, we hear that, we've heard it a few times, and so what we are dedicated to is we will look at that. A hiring official can submit that to AFPC for review and get a copy of that sister service PD, and we'll take a look at it. We'll compare the duties. Oftentimes, I will share with you, and this is what the general can weigh in on, is those duties are not the same. They're not written the same. There's elements that are different amongst them. And things like, well, one is a supervisor and the other is not. Another one was a contracting specialist, and one had a warrant level that was like 10 times the award level that the one position Air Force had. So some of it may be an organizational structure thing on the way the duties are aligned and that sort of thing. Some of it just may be the duties are not the same, but we will certainly take a look at that. We'll do a review on it, and we can provide that feedback after the review. But that's something that we see a lot of.
Yeah, so you're seeing that here, right? Folks come into the system, they come into the Air Force, and then they go, hey, there's another job that's open up in the Marine Corps side of the house that's at a higher classification level, right? So I'm bounce, here we go. And you're like, God, how does this happen? Okay, that's not uncommon, but it goes to exactly what Sharon's talking about. What is that position? Are they doing things slightly different than what you're doing? And if it is slightly different and it's classified at a higher level, okay, is there something we can do, all right, with our position description in there to say, no, this is the exact person I'm looking for, but our position description is not exactly the same. Rewrite it, or have the jobs or the functions that the individual is doing in the Air Force match that with the Marine Corps side of the house. Then we'll take that back through AFPC. We'll take a look at it for potential reclassification out there so that we're all operating on the same level. Hill Air Force Base is a huge example of that, right? You got folks that are out there, any maintainers in here by any chance? Okay. Across the board at Hill, you got maintainers that are working in the wing, and you got maintainers that work in the depot level. So what happens is all the individuals come into the wing at XGS level, and they look right across the street at depot, and they go, hey, they're getting paid higher. And in fact, I qualify for the position over there, and they're bouncing and going over there. Wing commander screaming, same thing that you're looking at here. Well, gosh darn it, how come they keep doing this? You guys got to stop this at AFPC. All right, we peel back the onion, and what it comes down to is the job that they're doing at the wing is not exactly the same as the job that they're doing up at the depot. They were supervising more individuals. They were doing other types of things that brought them up to that higher classification. What we did was went back to the wing commander and says, what you need to do is reorganize, restructure, all right, your civilian workforce to ensure you can maintain that balance. Else, what's going to happen is they're going to keep pulling that. Okay? We cannot arbitrarily just go in there and match the classification level. All right? That just doesn't work out. Who's familiar with the air traffic control issue that we had? Are you an air traffic controller? Okay, that we had out at Shepherd. Ultimately, a couple guys doing a bunch of great things. They're going, dude, we're at GS 11s. We think we ought to be at a higher GS rating. So what they did was put in, what do we call it?
OPM appeal.
An appeal into OPM to say, hey, we should be at GS 11. This is OPM, right? This is the level above AFPC in there. And when they put that appeal process in and OPM took a look at it, what do you think happened? They said, not only are you not going to be a GS 12, in fact, we're going to make you GS 10s. And they came back and says, you guys are now GS 10s. Every time we've tried to appeal to OPM, they've either stayed at the same level or they've downgraded everything. All right? Then on top of that, they said, go around the Air Force, and I don't know if this happened to you. Hopefully it didn't. We turned this off. But go around the Air Force and now take a look at every air traffic controller to make sure that they're at the right level and that they're valid GS 11 positions. So that was a number. We were fortunate enough, all right, through A1 and MR to squash that portion of it. But unfortunately, those 3 positions were downgraded to 10s. The individuals that are sitting there, all right, are still maintaining their pay and maintaining their GS 11. But as soon as they retire, guess what's going to happen? The next individual that rolls in there is going to be a GS 10. So there's some things in that aspect of it we got to be careful of. You know, and in my mind, what's right and what the OPM process are 2 different things. I think I've got an uphill battle in a little bit of it because I consider impact to mission failure, which I'm not sure that OPM does so much. I could be supervising a whole lot of people, but the impact to mission failure is probably not that high. An air traffic controller that's sitting in the tower, right, may not be supervising a whole lot of folks, but impact to mission failure means aircraft run into each other, all right, or something like that happens. To me, that ought to classify at a little bit higher rate. But that's Drifter, right? That's my opinion of this thing. Now I've got to figure out a way to push that through the OPM process. Make sense? Not a great answer, but that's where we're at with this, okay?
Okay, I have just a couple more in the meeting pulse that I wanted to address before we wrapped up here. One was notifications coming out of USA jobs in terms of the timeliness of those notifications. And I'm reading between the lines here that you're talking when between you apply for a job and get a notice whether you did or didn't get the job kind of notification. Some of that is delayed because as we're going through the process and we're notifying the candidate that did get selected and we're waiting for them to accept or decline the job and possibly having to go to an alternate, if I send out those notifications to everybody that may be alternates, they're going to move away from the job and go look at something else, and then we may have lost them. So some of that is delayed to make sure that if they're an alternate candidate, that they could possibly still be offered the job. So we're not closing out those actions until we know for sure that the individual that's been selected has actually accepted and processed that selection request. So that's what some of that delay is. I will share with you that on occasion I do need to go out and remind the production floor that they need to close them out and push them out because sometimes they forget to do that in the step process. But that's where the Civilian OneLink tool is coming in into handy for us because that tells them exactly what they need to be doing. So we're not having to do as much reminding on that as we were previously. So hopefully you're going to start to see some improvement on that because of the tool that we put in place. The last question that I wanted to address, because we do get this often when we're in the Use Safety and PACAF roadshows, and that is the 5-year rotation policy. That's a DoD policy. That is not one that Air Force controls. I will tell you about 6 years ago, DoD was audited, and the audit was not good. They came back and said, you're not complying with the law. And some of the requirements for the rotation, and that comes down to like the length of it and that sort of thing for initial tours, is based on SOFA agreements and also the law. And so when DoD wasn't complying with the 5-year rotation policy and having folks rotate out, they got dinged pretty bad with it. So they came back online and they enforced it stronger than they had before. And where Air Force is even looking at what level of approval authority there is for waivers and extensions. And it may even be going up to the Secretary of the Air Force at this point. So
Where is it right now? Is it at the MAGCOM
right
level?
now it's at the MAGCOM level.
Yeah.
So, so I don't see, the question in the pulse was, do we see any changes coming? The only changes that we see coming is possibly the level of approval being elevated above what it is currently today.
Nobody can hear. Nobody can hear.
So the extensions. So the 5-year civilian extensions, they've been delegated down to the wing. So anything up to 5 years is at the wing level. If it's going to 7, it comes up to us. So it goes through your civilian personnel office, the package comes up to headquarters PACAP, and it's reviewed by our team in A1KK, which is the personnel team. They make a recommendation, we send it up to the MAGCOM vice commander who looks at it. We have been getting, actually, most of them have been getting approved. What our team does is look at it, make sure everything's available, and all of your packages, everything you need has been submitted, and we have been recommending approval of those, and they have been getting approved. So go ahead and submit those packages, send them through your CPO office, and they come on up to us. After 7 years, it goes up to your NAF commander, the numbered Air Force commander, for approval. And some of those are getting approved also because there's the skill sets for the job is so specific, and some of the requirements are so specific to overseas, they get approved. So they have been getting approved. Go ahead and submit them, and we'll look at them. Please don't think that we're not going to look at those.
How many are on extension right now? Just curious. Okay, that's a good number. How many want to be on an extension that aren't yet? All right, necessarily. Okay. All right, looks like there's a few in here. And again, this question came up at USAFE. Hang on to that. Don't let that question go away. The same thing came up at USAFE, all right? And it was MAGCOM commander dependent on how he would authorize the extensions. And it was taking a look at the civilian workforce as a whole and going, hey, I want to keep people in here because I need them for continuity. And then the other parts that he would look at was, hey, I needed to rotate people out, all right, for other different reasons. So there's a balance in what ones that he would approve and what ones that he wouldn't. All right, so it makes sense, and it sounds like it's the same thing that working at the wing level here. Go ahead.
Hi, sir.
Yeah.
Shane Downman, I'm the air traffic manager down in Baja.
Okay.
Is it, okay. Question I have, when you talk about the extensions beyond 5 years, and let me tell you, I'm not one of those ones that wants to stay beyond 5 years, but I do have employees that are. What we run into, and it's not just my career field, is there are other career fields where we have to recruit entirely from the CONUS because we don't have air traffic controllers just laying around. Wouldn't it be prudent and fiscally responsible if our recruitment effort results only CONUS people that we have to spend money to bring over? If we have employees that want to stay in those positions and the wing doesn't have to spend that money to bring them over, and we're told it's about $25K per rotation for family, wouldn't one of the reasons for doing that extension be fiscal responsibility and not just mission failure that we're getting stuck with? And that's what I would like to see happen, is that be delegated down to the wing commander who knows best what he needs at his wing. And if we have to take, and I know he said 209 days down there for a recruit. I'm averaging about 300 days to get somebody over here.
It's because you can't get a slate, right? You can't
No,
get
sir, I
individuals in
have
there.
no shortage of people volunteering to come over, whatever the process is that goes through. But by the time, we're already over 200 days by the time the job ad goes out. So, I mean, it's a little frustrating. So I've resorted to management-directed assignments to get people over here, but I'm bringing people over just because. The wing should be saving money on these PCSs if there's people who want to stay in place and I have to bring somebody from stateside.
Are you not able to extend folks?
Beyond 5 years, if I can't show mission failure, which I can't because I've got plenty of people that want to come over and replace them. So it's I can't show mission failure if this guy goes. All I'm saying is it's fiscal responsibility to save money.
Yeah. Okay. We'll keep working that piece. That's a coordination piece, I think, amongst PACAF
It's a balance,
and the
sir.
entire team.
It comes
So-
down to balance in those that want to go overseas. If we have individuals that don't leave the overseas area, then we can't open up spaces for folks that also want to go and have that same great experience, right? So it's a balance between paying for someone else to PCS, but also finding those opportunities for those that are stateside that also want to go over and have that same experience that somebody's had.
Okay, so thanks, Sharon. So just heads up, we got the next group that's rolling in here. If you guys got any more burning questions, Sharon will be up here at front. I appreciate you guys taking the time to come out here, and I know there was a bunch of questions on Meeting Pulse, so we'll get back to you with some of the answers if we didn't actually address those today for you. All right? Sound good? Thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys coming out. Thanks. Thank you. All right.